There's a moment in every psychopathic seduction when the predator knows they have won. The victim does not recognize it. They cannot. Because by the time this moment arrives, the victim has already been neurochemically rewired to mistake destruction for devotion. Every cult leader in history followed the same pattern. Every con artist, every abusive partner who seemed perfect at first. It has 5 phases, and by phase 3, escape becomes nearly impossible. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what those 5 phases look like, how they unfold, and most importantly, how to recognize which phase you might be in right now. This is Covert Influence, where we dissect the mechanics of manipulation. What you do with this knowledge is your choice. Today, I'm going to walk you through the 5-phase seduction pattern documented by forensic psychologists across decades of research, from Robert Hare's work with criminal psychopaths to Paul Babiak's studies of corporate predators. I will show you how each phase works, why it is so effective, and what it looks like in practice using real cases. By the end, you will understand exactly how psychopaths manufacture what feels like the deepest connection of your life and then systematically destroy it. Phase 1 is assessment. This is where it begins, before you even know you have been selected. Here is what most people do not understand. Psychopaths do not stumble into relationships. They select targets with the precision of a predator choosing prey. Research by Angela Book at Brock University found something disturbing. Individuals scoring high on the psychopathy checklist were significantly more accurate at identifying vulnerable people simply by watching them walk, not talking to them, not interacting with them, just observing their gait. The predator sees vulnerability in nonverbal cues you do not even know you are broadcasting. Stride length, weight shifting, eye contact patterns, fidgeting. These microsignals communicate social submissiveness and lower confidence. Ted Bundy himself stated he could tell a victim by the way she walked down the street, the tilt of her head, the manner in which she carried herself. But here is where it gets counterintuitive. Psychopaths do not only target the insecure, they specifically seek out empathetic and nurturing individuals, people who see the good in others, who rationalize unusual behavior, who do not give up easily. Research from Boston University indicates psychopaths know empaths will stick around and keep trying to help or save them. Your compassion is not a virtue to them. It is an attack surface. They also target high-quality individuals with enviable traits, charisma, success, strong moral values. Why? Envy. They want what you have. Your reputation becomes their cover. Your resources become their supply. During assessment, the psychopath runs systematic tests. Small boundary violations to measure your tolerance. Charm offensives to gauge your receptiveness to flattery. Sharing vulnerable information to see if you will reciprocate with exploitable personal details. They make digs about your appearance under the guise of just joking. If you protest, you cannot take a joke. If you laugh along, you have just shown them where your boundaries flex. The predator sees you. The victim feels seen. Phase 2 is idealization. You know this by another name, love bombing. This is when the manufactured soulmate appears. Suddenly, someone enters your life who seems to be exactly what you have always wanted. They mirror your interests with uncanny precision. They finish your sentences. They understand you in ways no one ever has. The connection feels supernatural. It is not supernatural. It is strategic. The psychopath has constructed what Paul Babiak calls a psychopathic fiction. A persona specifically designed to fulfill your psychological needs. Everything you told them during assessment, every vulnerability you revealed, every desire you expressed, becomes raw material for this fabrication. They are not connecting with you. They are reflecting you back at yourself. The neurochemistry during this phase is real. Your brain releases norepinephrine, oxytocin, dopamine, and endogenous opioids. You experience genuine bonding. But here's the critical asymmetry. This bonding only happens in you. The psychopath's brain does not form these attachments. They are watching your reaction the way a scientist observes a lab rat. Love bombing manifests through specific behaviors, constant communication, hundreds of texts per day. They want to know everything about your life. Early declarations of love, sometimes within days or weeks, pressure for rapid commitment, talk of marriage, moving in together, building a future, before you have had time to see who they actually are. Grand romantic gestures that seem too good to be true, because they are. A University of Arkansas study found love bombing is positively correlated with narcissistic tendencies and negatively associated with self-esteem in the perpetrator. The person showering you with attention is not expressing abundance. They are expressing emptiness. This phase typically lasts 3 to 6 months, long enough to form deep attachment, short enough to maintain the facade. Phase 3 is devaluation. This is where the mask begins to slip. The transition happens gradually at first. The person who could not get enough of you suddenly seems distracted. The constant attention becomes intermittent. The compliments become criticisms wrapped in concern. I'm only telling you this because I care about you. Here is what is actually happening. The psychopath's reward system has returned to baseline. The neurochemical high they got from conquering you has worn off. As forensic psychologist J. Reed Meloy explains, the psychopath must act out this manipulative cycle repetitively and compulsively in order to experience feelings of exhilaration and contempt. You were the source of exhilaration. Now you're the target of contempt. Devaluation tactics follow predictable patterns. Withdrawal of affection, what some call the silent treatment. Introduction of criticism, often targeting the very qualities they initially praised. Triangulation, bringing third parties into the dynamic to create jealousy and insecurity. They mention an ex. They flirt with someone in front of you. They compare you unfavorably to others. And then there is gaslighting. This is perhaps the most insidious technique because it attacks your perception of reality itself. They deny saying things you clearly heard. They reframe events so you're somehow at fault. They call you too sensitive when you react to genuine mistreatment. They create confusion about what actually happened. Dr. Don Hughes, who testified as an expert witness at the NXIVM trial, described how Keith Raniere used systematic gaslighting to maintain control over victims. Any criticism of the organization was redirected back as the victim's problem, a flaw in their character, a weakness to overcome. The victim begins distrusting their own perception and relies on the abuser for reality validation. The most destructive element of devaluation is intermittent reinforcement. The psychopath does not switch entirely to cruelty. They alternate. Abuse, then a flash of the idealization phase. Cruelty, then a glimpse of the person you fell in love with. This unpredictability is not accidental. B.F. Skinner's research demonstrated that intermittent reinforcement creates the strongest behavioral conditioning. It is the same psychological mechanism that makes gambling addictive. Your brain becomes hooked on the unpredictable reward. You work harder and harder to return to the honeymoon phase, accepting diminishing crumbs of kindness in exchange for increasing abuse. Phase 4 is the discard. This is the moment of abandonment. By now, you are emotionally depleted. You have given everything trying to restore what you thought you had. You have lost touch with friends and family because they do not understand. You have compromised your values, your boundaries, your sense of self. And at precisely this moment of maximum vulnerability, the psychopath leaves. The discard is brutal by design. Often it happens without explanation. One day they simply vanish, or they engineer a situation where you are forced to leave, allowing them to play the victim. Or they reveal they have already begun the idealization phase with someone new. A 2024 study by researchers at the University of Almeria analyzed how victims described their post-discard state. The most common words were ruin, broken, dead, and crazy. Victims reported depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Many described feeling like a shell of their former selves. The NXIVM case provides extensive documentation of this phase. Survivor Sarah Edmondson described how the organization demanded increasingly damaging collateral, nude photos, false confessions, material that could be used as blackmail. The escalation was gradual. It started with small amounts of money for trivial infractions. By the end, members had handed over material that made leaving feel impossible. This is the pattern. Gradual escalation of commitment until the cost of exit exceeds the cost of staying. Phase 5 is hoovering, named after the vacuum brand because the psychopath attempts to suck you back in. Just when you have begun to heal, they reappear. The contact might seem accidental. They were thinking about you. They saw something that reminded them of you. They have been doing a lot of soul searching. Suddenly the love bombing returns. They seem genuinely remorseful. They acknowledge their mistakes. They promise change. They say everything you wanted to hear during the devaluation phase. This is not growth. This is strategy. The psychopath returns for several reasons. Their new target is not providing sufficient supply. They want to prove they still have power over you. They are bored. Or they simply cannot tolerate the idea that you might have moved on. If you accept them back, the cycle begins again. Idealization, devaluation, discard. Each iteration typically escalates in intensity. The love bombing phase shortens. The devaluation becomes harsher. The discard comes faster. Now here is why this matters to you. You have experienced elements of this pattern. Maybe not all 5 phases, maybe not with a clinical psychopath, but the tactics themselves appear across a spectrum of manipulative relationships. The coworker who alternates between charm and sabotage, the friend who puts you on a pedestal then tears you down, the family member whose approval you can never quite earn. Think about the last time you felt completely understood by someone new. Did that understanding come suspiciously fast? Think about a relationship where you found yourself constantly confused about what was real, where you apologized for things that were not your fault, where the person you loved seemed to have been replaced by a stranger. The sign most people miss is the manufactured soulmate effect. When someone mirrors your interests, values, and desires with uncanny precision, when the relationship feels magical within weeks, these represent red flags rather than romance. Genuine connection develops gradually through authentic self-disclosure. It involves friction and misunderstanding, and the slow process of actually getting to know another person. Perfect compatibility from the start is not destiny. It is design. Here's how to protect yourself. First, trust your instincts. If something feels off, take it seriously rather than dismissing your discomfort. Your unconscious mind often registers threats before your conscious mind can articulate them. Second, maintain your outside relationships. Isolation is the psychopath's most powerful tool. Friends and family provide reality checking. They can observe what you cannot see from inside the fog of neurochemical bonding. Third, observe how they handle the word no. Healthy people respect boundaries. Psychopaths escalate pressure, use guilt, or simply ignore limits you have set. Early boundary testing predicts later behavior. Fourth, slow the pace. Resist rushing into commitment regardless of how perfect things seem. Time is your ally because the psychopathic fiction requires energy to maintain. Over months, the mask begins to slip. Predators prefer fast commitment precisely because it prevents this natural verification process. Fifth, watch for inconsistencies. Because the persona is manufactured, maintaining consistency is impossible. Listen for contradictions. Note when their stories do not add up. Pay attention when their behavior with others does not match their behavior with you. The limitation is this. Even with knowledge, even with vigilance, sophisticated manipulation exploits vulnerabilities that exist in everyone capable of love and connection. The same empathy that makes you a good partner makes you a target. The same capacity for attachment that enables intimacy enables trauma bonding. This is not a flaw in you. It is the cost of being human. The vulnerability was always there. Now you know what it looks like when someone exploits it. Manipulation does not work because predators are powerful. It works because we want to believe. We want the soulmate to be real. We want to trust our feelings. We want to see the good in others. These are not weaknesses. They are the foundations of human connection. The psychopath perverts them. Understanding the pattern does not eliminate vulnerability. It gives you the ability to recognize when vulnerability is being weaponized against you. Now you see it. The only question is, will you keep watching it happen? If you want to keep seeing what others miss, subscribe. The next video goes deeper.